Looks kind of trapped in a corner.
And we're live.
Are we not doing the content warning? No, we're live.
No, Gabby said no.
Okay.
No content warning.
Whoops. Without ting. Hey.
That's our intro for today. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Talksicology, the best mental health and addiction live streaming show on Facebook. I am Joseph Gorordo. I am the Vice President of Outreach at Recovery Unplugged, which is the organization that helps us to put this show on for you guys every week. If it's your first time here, thank you for joining us. If you're coming back for more, thanks for coming back. Please like, share, tell your friends, spread the word that this is the place to be, to have some in-depth real conversations about some real issues regarding addiction and mental health. As we go through the show today, please feel free. We love interaction. If you want to throw some comments in the live stream, if you have questions for anybody who's on the show today, please don't hesitate, and let's get right into it. So we have, as always, the Andy Richter to my Conan, what else? Jason, you got something for me? I don't.
Oh no, I was going to do the turn like you tried to do when you came in.
Okay. Turn back. Okay. As always, the trusty sidekick, the Robin to my Batman, the Harley Quinn to my Joker.
Hey, thanks for having me. Can you cite that initial remark that we're the best live stream on Facebook? Do you have any info to back that up?
I did a survey. Okay. Sample size consisting entirely of friends of mine in Austin, Texas. And
your wife and kids say this is the best live stream on 7 p.m. Central Time Thursday night.
75% of the members of my household believe that this is the bast live stream.
3 out of 4 ain't bad, Joe. That's good.
So today we're going to be talking about harm reduction, and we have a beautiful, lovely, amazing person joining us today. Everybody, this is we were talking a little bit before the show. Clifton is someone who used to work at Recovery Unplugged, but we never had to work together that much. We were like ships passing in the night, but he's someone whose reputation, whose aura just exudes positivity, exudes healing and love and intelligence. And just Clifton's just an amazing guy, and you just know it even if you don't know him super well. So without any further ado, Clifton Fair. He is a CGP, ILM7, LMHC. I don't even know what all those letters do, but why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about you real quick, Clifton?
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it. Warm welcome. And Jason, I know Jason as well from the work we've done together at Recovery Unplugged. Currently working in private practice as an LMHC and also working in the executive world as a ILM7, which is a international leadership and mentoring certification for professionals and C-suite execs. Just coaching and mentoring, and international certification in group psychotherapy. That's what those letters mean, Joe.
International certification, man. So Cliff is a man who has put in some work, y'all. And look, you're getting some love in the comments. Jennifer N said Cliff is amazing. So
hey Jen, what's up, Jen? Yeah. Shout out, Jen. Big ups.
Yeah. So even though I have not had the pleasure of getting to know you super, super well, Cliff, Jason here has. Jason, tell us some things about Cliff that Cliff won't tell himself.
Jason, I have some money. Yeah, I got some money, Jason. Listen, I got
that's the thing about Clifton, is that he is just very humble, and if you just give him some honest, positive feedback, he has a hard time digesting and accepting it. He is So Clifton, full disclosure here, Clifton was not my primary therapist, but I was in many of Clifton groups and confided with him quite a bit while I was a client in Recovery Unplugged. So he started his first day at Recovery Unplugged was my first day of IOP. So I feel like we kind of started a journey together because I was just getting out into the real world and he was there. So we got to talk a lot. And yeah, he's just, his positivity and energy was just, I've never, going through a treatment center as a client and then working there and knowing, dozens and dozens of staff members and hundreds of clients. Like you hear about the bullshit that, people would say about each other. And I honestly can say that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything negative about Clifton.
So. Universally loved.
Universally loved.
No, that's awesome. And Cliff, the majority of my clinical work that when I was still doing a lot of clinical work was in IOP. And that IOP level of care, like what Jason was talking about, like when you've been sober a couple months and you're starting to hit that wall of real life, man, that was my jam. I loved, getting to walk through clients when it was real deal, right? Like you could go get drunk right after group, you go find a job, it's on you now. And we're here to support you on this. That was my favorite.
So, I mean, IOP was definitely, I feel like a great place for me to really kind of cut my teeth as a brand new registered mental health counseling intern, because I really feel like they gave me probably one of the caseloads when I first started. And I just kept telling, the leaders of the organization, hey, give me more. Because although it was tough, the reward in seeing people really come out on the other side, people such as Jason coming out on the other side on a day-to-day basis of what life looked like, as you just described it, Joe, having to make those tough decisions about, do I throw it all away immediately after groups with this next decision that I make? And knowing that, I myself as a therapist, at RU, kind of held some of that glue, in their program of recovery together. It was humbling. It still is a humbling experience. So I mean, shouts out to all those around the country and around the world that are some intensive outpatient programs, fighting for it every day. You're doing the work, hang in there. I think that was one of the things that Jason and I talked about back in the day, and I still hold true to it today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out to all the guys who are in IOP right now at any facility, anywhere. That's the real work, y'all. That's the real work. And you're doing it. So let's get into our topic for today. So harm reduction is, it can be kind of a sticking point, right? A lot of, the traditional 12-step fellowships really hold to abstinence as being the only path to recovery. And for good or for ill, right, the treatment, the entire treatment industry sprung forth from people who recovered in those 12-step fellowships. So that kind of became the de facto definition of recovery. And as a licensed professional who is in 12-step recovery, harm reduction is something that I've had a journey with for sure. But let's just start off. Like, what is harm reduction? Who wants to jump on it?
I mean, I will.
You have all the letters.
Let's got more letters than anybody. Let's go.
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, the evolution of, the access to substances really has just increased tremendously. It's gone from mom and dad's medicine cabinet and the local bars to, just the incredible accessibility in various forms, whether it's through social media, within our communities. Just, I mean, it's so, it's just so accessible. So, in order to combat that, because not everybody is willing and ready to say, hey, I have a problem, because so many people are just kind of stuck in the middle of the grass of addiction. They couldn't even see it. It's like being in the middle of the forest. So rather than trying to have that distance, which is like use and then treatment, now there's like, some additional fillers that are going to be backed by our leaders in the White House, Biden and Harris. But harm reduction is really just, and I say just, that's minimizing. So I say harm reduction is really something that is more of a pragmatic or like a compassionate way of trying to kind of like bring people to a place where they can stay healthy while they're in the thick of use, which already is a stigma. When you use drugs, people look down on you, right? That's kind of the way it's been. So having a place where you can go and get some support in the middle of your addiction while also receiving education and being provided with resources to community-based programs, housing, testing sites, medication for Hep C, Hep B, Hep A, or connected to medical providers that can do that for you. Needle exchange programs, actually SSPS, syringe service programs, syringe. Did I say that right?
You got it.
We were struggling with this acronym before. Right. So, but it's a place where people truly are met where they are. Like, so the patient in this case is not kind of like lost in the thick of, the recovery world, because they're still in their use. They're met where they are, which is, you walk through a door and a person on the other side of a desk or sitting right next to them will look them in the eye, reassure them that there's help available, but also provide them with safer methods of using substances that are illegal as well as harmful, and coaching them along the way. It can be a really compassionate and awesome way to attract people into a different way of living, rather than telling them they should or locking them away because they can't stop.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw something really cool the other day on Instagram that I want to share with y'all. There's this guy I follow on Instagram. It's called Reaction Recovery. I don't know anything about him, but he's got good stuff. And he said this. He said, addiction is the only chronic condition where anything less than 100% symptom remission forever is considered a failure. Jason, the floor is yours.
Okay, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, right. I had to let the breath out on that one. Damn, Jason, Joseph.
But and I come from, I work a 12-step program and got clean through Recovery Unplugged plus a 12-step program. So that's how I know how to get clean, right? So, or sober or in recovery, what have you. So if somebody asks me to help them personally go through, the 12 steps and have me mentor them and help them through it, that's the only way I know how to guide them through it. However, my opinion has greatly changed on what is good for me might not be good for someone else. I know, Joseph, I've heard you say, I don't remember the exact number that you used, but there's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out. And I truly believe that. And just, I think moving to Austin really opened my eyes to that, because I see a lot of people who use different methods of recovery, and and that's where the gray area is like certain things that could be called recovery and certain things in certain circles that would be called recovery that are kind of shunned in other circles. I've just come to a place personally, like, that's not up to me. Like, whatever works for you and keeps you healthy and alive, like, fantastic. For me, I have my way. And like, for instance, like, I know that this is, I've talked to a couple of people about this who don't think I'm the best person for saying this, but I will not sponsor somebody who's on Suboxone. Like, I will help them and guide them along, but I'm not going to start step work with them just because that's the way it was done with me, and that's the only way I know how to help somebody. However, if a long-term Suboxone maintenance is going to help this person thrive, and I've seen plenty of people thrive on Suboxone maintenance, like, I'm all for it.
So let me ask you. I got to push on this a little bit, Jason. Why?
Just because I'm a firm believer, like I followed somebody who did it a certain way, and that's how they got it, right? That's the way they did it, and they could only show me that way because that's how they did it. It's sort of like it's tradition, you know. And like I said, like I have nothing against or don't think that somebody who does that has any less recovery than I do, which you know, I hear a lot of people say things to the contrary about that, but you know,
Yeah.
in that way I've become more open-minded about it. But I've definitely, for me personally, this is what works for me, and if you want to follow my path, this is how I can show you to do it. If that doesn't work for you, please try something else. Like, you know, if abstinence only isn't going to work for you, please try something else. So I got a question for you, Joseph. What do
Okay.
you think about California sober?
You know what? I actually saw a post today where a very prominent professional in the treatment industry was posting on Facebook and had been interviewed for an article asking them, you know, his opinion on the California sober thing. Because he very publicly was like, shame on The Weeknd and shame on Demi Lovato for pushing this false narrative. And I'm so glad that I think Demi Lovato just came out that she's like sober now, right? Whatever that means.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I am all for California sober if that's what works for somebody. Like, so now I'm like you, Jason. I work a 12-step program, got sober, abstinence only, very old school bootstrap, like yell at you kind of sponsorship that I had back in the day. But recovery to me is a spectrum, you know, and anything that helps you get to a place where you're not hurting yourself or the people around you, or are decreasing how much you hurt yourself and hurt the people around you, I believe is something to be celebrated. Now, I didn't start there, right? Like I started very like, this is the only way. And then my mind opened a little and a little and a little. But I think that if there's an individual who is struggling with drugs and alcohol severely, and now they pay their bills, they're in a healthy relationship, they're not hurting the people around them, they've got a job, they're productive, they're happy with where they are, and they happen to smoke a little weed every now and then, go for it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that one of the things that is tough is that until Bill and Bob said we have a way to get people sober, every other class of professional had thrown their hands up in the air with alcoholics and addicts, you know.
So for Tracy in Wisconsin, do you want to tell them who those people are?
Yeah. So Bill, and I'm going to give you all real quick AA 101. I'm going to try to do it super quick. But so for, you know, alcohol and drugs have been a problem for millennia, right? Like there's passages in the Bible that warn against the dangers of alcohol, right? And over the millennia, over the centuries, you know, doctors, clergymen, early psychiatrists and therapists have all tried to heal alcoholism in different ways, right? Exorcisms, lobotomies, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And they all kind of threw their hands up in the air up until Bill and Bob started AA. They were really the first individuals, and AA was the first organization to say, we have something that we know will work if people follow these directions, right? So because of that, their definition of recovery became the de facto definition of recovery, right? Now, they started AA in 1945. And in the past 80 years or whatever it is, we have research and advances in science and in medicine and all these amazing things, and have come to understand that a spectrum of recovery, that there's all kinds of different ways people recover, some with medication, some without, some moving from a more addictive substance to a less addictive substance, some reducing the frequency of their relapses, et cetera, you know, has really broadened that term to where like you're in recovery when you say you are, at least to me, right? And so, yeah, I'm super liberal though. I'm like to the far left of what of what most people are supportive of, and that's okay. All right.
You know, as y'all are talking, I'm thinking about, you know, that statement that, you know, that maybe even a bit of an oath that I took as a licensed mental health counselor, and that's, you know, that's do no harm. So that one statement alone really does kind of wrap or encourages me, demands me as a professional, a licensed professional, to wrap my arms around everybody that kind of comes through that door for treatment, for care, for services. So although there are the, hey, you know what, this is the way that I've been taught. This, you know, although that's very real and very effective when you're kind of like holding that hard line for people to really kind of like step up to it and grab somebody else's hand and walk that line. I'm watching how we're still able to reach many other people and get them to that place, right? The maintenance assisted treatment is working in effect to help people get to a better place of living, and ultimately, you know, one that may be sober, right? Completely sober, completely walking the line of recovery.
And that's a great point. The harm reduction spectrum includes complete abstinence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just one end of the spectrum.
Yep.
So
Yep.
So cool. So now I know we've talked a lot about, you know, we got into a little bit about the Suboxone, right? Which is kind of like one of the most hot button things. But harm reduction isn't just medication assisted treatment or medication assisted recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's drug testing supplies, right? To make sure that your stuff isn't cut with fentanyl. It's clean injection sites. It's needle exchange programs. It's on some of the more extreme ends. I always forget if it's like, I want to say Switzerland or the Netherlands. You can actually register with the government as a heroin addict and will be given tested, regulated, clean heroin on a daily basis.
Yeah, Switzerland. I looked into trying to move there when I first found out about that.
I feel like I'm in the pond.
So let's jump through all those real quick, right? So drug testing kits, for or against? For.
Well, I'm going to say that everything that you mentioned would have helped me when I was out there in my active addiction, because I've got. So if we're going just subject to subject, I'm all for it, because I've gotten bad drugs before and overdosed. So that would have helped me. Now, would I have taken the time to actually test it? That I'm not sure. You know, because I'm sure, Joseph, you can attest. Like if you're sick and you're just getting your dope, the last thing that you're really thinking of is testing. I think testing, it means you start taking a little and then seeing if you survive. Then
no. Well, you bring up a good point, right? You know, most opiate addicts who overdose and die are their highest risk of overdose and death is on a relapse. Right, that first shot after they've had a tolerance, and Jason did just bring up, you know, a really common practice, right? You load your fix, do just a little bit of it to test it, and then do more. But absolutely, and I think especially with, you know, you and I got sober before the fentanyl stuff really hit the streets,
right?
So where
me,
yeah. So, I mean, you could be, you know, I mean, they got the pressed pills now where you think you're taking one thing and it's something completely different. Cliff, where are you at on the testing kits?
I'm definitely for it. You know, I feel like education and access to that knowledge could possibly save lives. You know, I was just thinking, we're talking, you know, I remember the time of, you know, the statement being pushed around, which is, you know, live to use, and then all of a sudden it progresses into using to live. And if somebody's sick, you know, and the only medication that they're getting is bad medication, like we would address that in a hospital. So why would we address that in the community if we have resources to do that, or to try to at least keep people healthy enough, long enough to get access to MAT or maintenance assisted treatment or counseling or something, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
We're getting some great feedback in the chatter too. Very active. I mean, I told y'all this topic was going to be a little more controversial than some, but everybody in the chat is saying they're for the testing for sure. Crystal Renee actually said, my friends keep dying from fentanyl. If they had test kits and Narcan, maybe they'd be alive today. Absolutely. That's happening too much all over the country. And I think a lot of folks think that, you chose to do drugs, right? Like a lot of folks still view drug use as a moral failing, right? You're a bad person.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to supervised injection sites. For or against? So, and for those of y'all, for Tracy in Oregon or Ohio, wherever Tracy is, so supervised test sites are places where they provide clean, a clean, safe environment with, very often they'll have supplies like sterilized water, clean needles, etc. And there's typically a medical staff of some sort on hand, a nurse, not to assist, but to supervise. And if anything goes wrong, they have things like Narcan, those little machines that shock your heart and things like that. To where it's really just providing a place where, if you're going to use these drugs, we hope you don't die while you do it. So for or against, guys?
I'm definitely for, and some of the againsts that I've heard is like, you're going to have to pay for people to staff these places, and these, you're going to have a place to do this and all that, and all the resources that are going to go into it. But I know in certain areas like EMTs are overrun with fentanyl overdoses, and that's all they deal with. You know what I mean? So I think it would help the community at large, and I think it would give. It could give more resources back to the community if other people like first responders don't have to deal with overdoses as much.
And JC, when you look at first responders, I really do see those people who are actually on site watching or monitoring people coming into a building in order to be safe housed while they use dangerous substances. Like those faces that they're walking in and connecting with turn into a person that they begin to talk to, right? That actually kind of like walks them in a different direction because of that level of and dare I say acceptance. I won't say approval, right? But I'll say acceptance. Acceptance for their struggle, acceptance for where they are, and then ultimately being a helping hand. Real quick, shout out. I'm saying hello to Patrick. Hey, Pat.
You watching the chat? Yeah. So
trying to keep up.
A really cool experience I got to have a couple years ago so this must have been 2019 because we didn't wear masks yet. I got to go speak at a law enforcement leadership conference and was able to co-present with the sheriff or the police chief of a little town up in Illinois. We presented together about how police can work with their treatment community to do better for the communities that they both serve. And I had this really cool experience of afterwards, an officer came up to me who was from Canada. And I want to say Toronto, but I could be wrong. But wherever they opened the first safe injection site in all of Canada. And that was in this guy's neighborhood, like on his beat that he would walk on. And he shared with me how when they first opened it, he was super, super against it. And he thought it was going to make his job harder and that it was them being soft on crime. But then he did exactly what you said, Clifton. He hung out. At first, he hung out just to see, and like kind of mean mug people. But he eventually started building relationships with some of these guys. And that the first time one of them came up to him and said, like, hey, man, like, do you have any idea how I could stop doing this? That like he his whole narrative on it flipped, and he got it. I thought that was super cool. All right, so what about syringe exchanges or
4.
syringe service programs? 4?
4.
Clifton says
I
4.
say
Jason?
4, and
Go ahead, Clifton.
One. Oh, go ahead, Cliff. That's right.
no, I say 4 because of some of the medical challenges that kind of come or stem from needle sharing, right? Most people who are actually using some of these illicit substances really don't have the insurance coverage to actually help them out whenever they do get into the hospital. So either they're getting to a certain place in their medical bills and they can no longer receive the care and treatment that they need, and then they wind up actually experiencing some additional issues or suffering some additional challenges because of the fact that they have just been desperate to actually use something. So I say 4. Once again, it's a access to different levels of care, hopefully getting them in the right way.
Absolutely. Jason?
100% 4. I have complete horror stories. I shut open in Dade, Broward County, Florida, mostly, and there's no sort of needle exchange program or anything like that there. So I knew a detox where people would go when they would go into detox. There was a rock where they would hide their crack stems and needles, and I would just go and grab them. And if I had time to wash them, I would. If I didn't, I would just use them. So I got Hep C. I had cellulitis more times than I'd like to even think about. Was hospitalized for it, and yes, so 100% 4, just because. It could have ended up a lot worse for me.
Yeah, same. I shared needles with some questionable people, many times. There was one time that I shared a needle with someone that I was just like, yeah, for sure. Like, this is, I'm signing up for some sort of disease. And it's a shame, right? That people have, that someone could think to themselves like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and risk it with this dirty needle. When what does a syringe cost? Like, not even retail, right? Like, what does a syringe cost? Like, what, pennies to make one?
Pennies.
Right?
Yeah, on the streets in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, they're $5 each.
Oh man, I never paid more than 2. But so and it makes me think about something else, Clifton. You kind of made me think about it. Is you were mentioning how someone shares needles, they get some sort of disease, some sort of infection. Now they're going to the hospital. They don't have insurance. And Jason, you mentioned it earlier, right? Like, well, who's going to pay to staff these safe injection sites, and who's going to? The thing is that taxpayers are already absorbing a lot of the cost to medically treat individuals who suffer from HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, staph infections, all these things that come from sharing dirty rigs, right? So I think it's actually, there's a far better harm reduction person than me would probably know the exact number, but it's something like every dollar spent on harm reduction and or prevention saves like $18 in the in all the cost to treat stuff. So, and it looks like everybody in our chat is also very much for all of it, y'all. the testing strips, the meds, the safe injection sites. So
there has to be one person who's con about some of this stuff. Come on, let's get
okay.
some,
I'm gonna scroll way back in the chatter. Okay, hold on. There was one.
Let's talk to our producer. Was there any negatives? No. Well, she says no.
No, there was one. There was one person. Okay. Here, we had a comment at 7:18 p.m. So about 20 minutes ago. We were on a different topic at the time. But Victoria A in the chatter said, but isn't Suboxone just another drug? I'm not degrading anyone by any means for using it as a step of recovery, but it can be abused and you can be dependent on it. Am I right? ? So I think that's something that we've all heard at one point, right? That argument. So what do you guys say to that? Suboxone is a drug. It does change the way you feel. It can be abused. So how do we rectify that with a program of recovery?
So, I think a lot of it's in the eye of the beholder. You know what I mean? It's a gray area. So say, and I'm going through this with somebody who I know who's been in jail for a while, right? They've been in jail for like 6-7 months. They detoxed in jail, and getting out, they want to go on a Suboxone maintenance program. And it's like, for there, I would think like, that sounds like I just want one free, you know what I mean? But if there's somebody who's seriously detoxing and wants to like continue their life and like integrate it in, and then maybe slowly go off of a taper or something like that, I think that is a proper use of it and not abuse. So, it's one of those things. It could be used. It depends what somebody's intentions are, I suppose. I don't know.
Okay. Which is really interesting, right? Because we never talk about motives or intentions with blood pressure medication or insulin, right? Which, I mean, that's part of how addiction is a little bit more of a complex topic, right?
Right. But I mean, so, if I took a little piece of Suboxone right now, I would, I would be high as hell, but for somebody who's coming off of heroin, they're taking Suboxone. They're not getting high off of it. They're just, it's just keeping them from going into withdrawal.
So Clifton, what's your response when someone says, "Hey, but you can get high on Suboxone"?
And I go back to what you were saying, Joe, really looking at the intention behind it. And that's something that we all have to be responsible and accountable to is, the intentions of our heart, the conscience of our heart. Am I doing this in order to escape something, or am I doing this in order to get bet on something? I totally support people actually, utilizing Suboxone in order to keep them from going into the depths of their opioid addiction. I don't support them hiding behind it. Me as a therapist, hiding behind it so that they don't face their struggles with addiction, yet alone any of the mental challenges or mental illness challenges that they're coming into my office with. The hope would be that everybody who's actually being exposed to any good support out there, whether it be the Suboxone or maintenance assisted treatment, or a good qualified therapist, that they're actually utilizing that to its fullest in order to get them to the place that they want to be in, which is a healthier, better version of themselves.
Yeah, right on. So I'm going to push a little bit more here, you guys. I think we've established I'm the most left-leaning on all of this stuff. So let's say someone's been on a stable dose of Suboxone for a year. They're seeing a therapist. They've got a job. All the major areas of their life have kind of stabilized. They're doing pretty good. Should that person taper off of the Suboxone?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
So someone's been on Suboxone for a year, have not used any other substances besides their Suboxone. They've taken their Suboxone as prescribed. Everything in their life has stabled out, to where they've got housing, they've got a job, they've got food, they all that good stuff is going on in their lives. Should they taper off?
I say it really depends on where they are. Can they taper off? So when you say should, then I see that hard line where it's like, okay, well, you're doing all these great things, you should definitely do it. Sometimes people hadn't been receiving the necessary psychological support in order to maintain a healthy ego, in order to continue to walk that line that they've been carrying while having that supportive device. So it's almost like ripping a pillar out without having that additional healthier support provided. So my personal recommendation would be that they're actually seeking support from the rooms. They're actually seeking support from a good sponsor, a good mentor, a good therapist, a good psychiatrist, and they're actually walking through their progression in order to get off of and let go of the Suboxone, for instance.
Jason, do you have any thoughts to contribute?
The only thing that I would, have any feelings towards is that, or any advice or suggestion I would give somebody who is wanting to maybe taper off Suboxone, I would say, so while you're on the Suboxone, what happens if there's one day where it's not available? One day where you can't get it down the road, and then you're going to be physically ill, and then the chances are you just wanting to stay physically ill when you can remedy it pretty quickly. That's where the relapse rates go really high up. So, yeah, I would definitely suggest them doing it, but under some sort of supervision, and having that backup to be like, listen, this is too much, I can't handle it, and they have the option to go back onto the Suboxone, and yeah.
Right on. And that one kind of got you, but just so you guys know, right? Like, there's no right answers in this, right? Like, that's one of the reasons why we can have a show every week and not run out of stuff to talk about, is because it's so complex, right? We're not even talking like socioeconomics and education and ethnicity breakdown and all that kind of stuff, and how that plays into recovery rates with different types of interventions. So let's see. We got a couple more little bullet points to hit before we kind of start wrapping things up. Why do you guys think harm reduction is something that gets people's their defenses up? I know I very often find myself on Facebook getting in arguments with people about different types of recovery and harm reduction and all that kinds of stuff. Why do y'all think that is? Like, why do we get so up in arms about this?
I think a lot of it can be just a lack of empathy. Somebody who, like you were talking about earlier, said, well, it was your choice to take drugs in the first place. Like, why? There's such a stigma behind it, and a lot of it is just because people don't understand. But then usually when somebody has a loved one who goes through it personally, a lot of opinions really change,
Yeah.
And Jesse, you hit the nail on the head. The ability for society at large to actually embrace persons struggling with addiction, the disease of addiction, right? It becomes sticky whenever you start getting into people who are more oppositional. And times out of 10, they're oppositional because they have lost a loved one. They do know what it feels like, or they're just completely ignorant to what it means to struggle under the disease of addiction. That empathic ability is not something that everybody would reach for. It's kind of easier for somebody up here to actually shake their finger at somebody that's struggling with it down here, because of the lack of a desire even to want to understand. It just kind of gives them a safer distance from an emotional and psychological standpoint.
Yes, I think that's a great point y'all both bring up. There's a 12-step speaker, a guy by the name of Bill C, who said something that really stuck with me. He said that what kept on happening in his recovery is that he would have an opinion of something, and then he would have an experience with it, and then his opinion would change. And I know that definitely applies for me and what Jason was talking about. When people have all these opinions until their family member goes through it. I can cite the specific person that made me start opening up my mind up about medication-assisted treatment and harm reduction interventions. I had a friend who we got into treatment around the same time. We picked up our 1-year chips the same month, at the same birthday meeting at our home group. And he relapsed shortly after that and spent the next 5 years kind of picking up 6 months, 9 months relapse, 6 months, 9 months relapse. And he was the type of guy that when he relapsed, like, he would burn his life to the ground in a weekend, like crash his car, cheat on his girlfriend, lose his job, end up in the ER, 24-hour period. Right. And, he is someone who really did he did the 12 steps. Like he sponsored people. He had a sponsor. He did all this stuff, to the best of his ability. And then after about 5 years of that, he had a doctor say, we're going to put you on Suboxone, and you're just going to stay on Suboxone until you're not. And that friend of mine, he spent about 3 years on Suboxone. And in those 3 years, he got off of probation or parole. Probation. He got off of probation. He met a girl. He got married, finished college, bought a house. And when they were getting ready to have their first kid is when he went to his doctor, like Jason was talking about, and both of y'all mentioned, right? He went to his doctor and said, hey, I want to come off of this before we have our first kid. And they tapered him down for like 6 months, like little bitty. And that friend of mine, like I couldn't turn to him and say, okay, you've got 1 day sober now that you finally got off the Suboxone, because his life, he had recovered, in all these different areas. So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like, you don't know it, so it's easy to judge it. And then someone comes into your orbit, right? Someone you care about goes through it, and it changes, right? And I see a lot of it in the chatter too, right? People talking about their sons, their daughters, their moms, and having all these different experiences with it. We did have another question in the chatter that I don't want to miss. Cindy Golembeski, I think I'm saying that right. She said, how would you describe mental health and addiction? Are they the same as one? So like, are they one and the same? Is addiction mental health? This sounds like a Cliff question. You got the letters.
So it's identified as well as through American Psychological Association and the DSM-5. Substance use disorder is classified as a disorder. So it is classified as a mental health issue as well as a medical issue. So yes, Sydney, I say yes. I could continue to go down and break that down even further, but yeah, 100%.
And this is great that now this is one of the easy questions to answer, right? Because American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, I think we've finally gotten to a point in society where we understand, for the most part, that addiction isn't about bad people. It's a disease. It's a disorder, just like anything else.
There's a big difference, and you guys both working in treatment for a long time can attest to this. There's a huge difference between somebody who has, let's say, like what I have. I put a chemical in my body and I'm off to the races no matter what. I'm that guy. You know what I mean? I'm going to crash my car. I'm going to lose my house within a week. That's me. Then somebody who got prescribed some medication and got physically addicted. And then, they do whatever they have to do to get off of it. And then they're restored. You know what I mean? They got their problem out of the way. Now they get back to their life. Because I've seen plenty of people like that. They don't need to do what I do with my 12-step programs and stay abstinent for the rest of my life. So, that's where I believe that there's definitely something within me that it's like, if I have one bite of ice cream, I'm eating the whole pint. That's just something that's in me.
Well, that's like in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? They talk about the hard drinker, right? That looks like an alcoholic, right? The way they drink is the way alcoholics drink, right? But the difference is the spiritual malady, right? AA talks about there's a disease of the body, mind, and spirit, and in in more professional language, it's referred to as a biopsychosocial disease, right? Mm-hmm. It's got these three components to really be it, right? And you're right. Give anybody opiates for 30 days straight, they're going to get physically dependent. Period. Right? That's biology. The difference between what AA calls the real alcoholic, right, or the true addict, is that, to me, I believe, is that spiritual component, right? Mm-hmm. Is that without a substance in my body, my natural state is irritable, restless, and discontent. And that's why people like you and me, I think, Jason, have no real option other than to continue to do some sort of spiritual work for the rest of our lives if we want to maintain the state of abstinence that we have achieved.
Wait, the rest of my life? Are you serious?
Oh God,
I
it sounds
mean,
like
you
so
can
tough.
stop whenever you want, Jason.
No, I hear
Cliff, what were you gonna say, man?
No, I mean, I really appreciate and respect the fact that you two are so candid and out there with, with your information and your experience. And I really see how when you open it up and exposing, I guess the truth, whether it be about yourself or about the current situation regarding this pandemic that we're dealing with regarding fentanyl. When you start opening yourself up to that or opening up about that, all of a sudden, people are kind of like pigeonhole it. Well, let's put it in a box and let's try to keep it tight because it becomes such a large conversation that people almost feel like they get lost in it. Like, well, I don't really know what my position is now that we're talking about it and airing it out. The reality is that, like, if you look at it as a medical issue, or if you look at it as a or as a psychological issue, it's an issue, right? What came first, the chicken or the egg? I'm saying this with all the earnestness in my heart. Like, it's a problem. If it's a problem, and if it's a problem, there are plenty of people and plenty of places that you can actually get some assistance in it, no matter if you see it as medical or psychological, whether it's an addiction or it's a mental health disorder. Like, it's a problem. Does that make sense?
I like that. I really like that. I've never heard anybody put it like that, but yeah, it's a problem, period. And okay, so could we apply that same logic to harm reduction, right? Like, is it the right solution? Is it the wrong solution? Is it a perfect solution? I think that's why I fall where I fall, right? Is like addiction, regardless of how and why and what, it causes harm, it causes suffering. And harm reduction, all of it, right? From abstinence to the testing to the safe injection sites, reduces suffering. And that's where I kind of fall in, like, you say, who cares what? It's a problem. I'm over here like, well, who cares what? It's a solution, or part of a solution, right?
I'm sorry, Joe, as you're talking, thinking about, if the three of us were to engage, let's say an elementary student, we'll say they're in first grade. If we were to engage a first grader in a conversation about quantum physics, I don't know if they necessarily be able to keep up with this, depending on how good of teachers we are, right? We might be able to have like that elementary conversation with the first grader. They start firing and catching the equations that we're throwing at them or the conversation. Yeah. But if we have a version of that conversation that's broken down and palatable for that first grader, we may have inspired that first grader to go and become a quantum physicist, right? Right. If we can actually break it down and feed them like pieces that they can understand, just like harm reduction is designed and meant to break down and feed people help with what they need or can understand or can accept, that they can accept where they are, right? First grade or graduate school, which is like, being Jason Sponti.
Yeah. Love it. Y'all, so this is, first I want to real quick acknowledge everybody in the chat today. It's been a really active chat, and that makes me real happy, and it really feeds this conversation. We're running low on time, so I'm going to go ahead and ditch the rest of our talking points so we can get the questions from the folks who are here right now, because I think that's really important, right? So we talked about addiction and mental health. Okay, I think we answered this already, but Cindy asked a follow-up question. She said, does addiction stem from mental health and vice versa? And I think, yeah, either or. Sometimes addiction leads to mental health issues, and sometimes mental health issues lead to addiction. 1,000 roads in, 1,000 roads out. And then we had a question from Kim Amabile. And she said, do any of you believe that one can go to treatment too many times?
So, speaking from experience, I was told that I had gone to treatment too many times and that I wasn't going to learn anything new and that, I was just going in, taking up space, right? But then I was told, so if you're not ready to do something while you're here, don't come back. It wasn't don't come back. It was don't come back with the same attitude. And I'm not going to say that I learned anything new or different my last time in treatment, but there was definitely a willingness in me that had changed. So no, I don't think anybody should give up if they have that desire to help themselves. Then I absolutely do not think that there is too many times, because I went 20 times total.
Yeah, as a therapist working in the treatment in the treatment center of Recovery Unplugged with what we call repeat clients, it was, my approach was, okay, well, I need to say it different, right? I need to say it a different way. I need to speak a different way as a participant in their process, because maybe that one new piece of information, or that one piece of information that they heard before, but they didn't click with it, maybe they'll get it the next time they go. And that's that hope aspect of it, which kind of feeds into which I was speaking about, is regarding the spiritual component of this disease, right? I as a therapist say, no, bring your ass back and allow us a shot at giving you maybe one piece of information that you fell asleep on in the 10:30 group. Let's see if you can hear it this time.
Yeah. Then there's also some people who I knew who did it kind of like a lifestyle and used it as sort of a safety net to be like, well, I could get high again and then come back to treatment, who'd never made it back. So again, with intentions, like if you're saying like I could get high again because I could go back to treatment, I'm not sure if I'm quite on board with that one, but no, I think if there's a genuine willingness, then
and I'll add a caveat to it. I think learning to not get high and live life sober is a skill set, right? And we learn skills by repetition, right? Whether you're learning the mechanics of how to throw a baseball properly, or you're memorizing lines for a play, right? Like humans, we learn through repetition. And I'm like Jason, I didn't hear anything revolutionary the last time I went to treatment, right? But I heard some of the same things enough times that I was like, okay, I guess maybe that's right. I will add a caveat to that though. I do think that a person can go back to the same treatment center too many times, right?
So I went to a little plug for Unplugged, is I went to treatment 19 times and then Recovery Unplugged once, and it worked.
Yeah. Well, thank you for
because
that,
of Clifton, specifically because of Clifton.
Specifically,
don't do that to me, you guys. I would get hate text messages from my former colleagues now. No, it was a team effort.
Yeah,
yes, it was.
But because one thing that I think we don't ask ourselves in addiction, because when someone relapses, right? It's always, what did you do wrong? Right? Like, why did you relapse? Right? Like, was it girls? Was it money? Was it you quit working your steps? Like, it's your fault that this happened, right? But I think at some point we have to ask ourselves, like, is it their fault, or is it that they didn't get the right treatment for them? Right?
Well, you said
maybe they needed more mental health treatment. Maybe they needed more trauma treatment. Maybe they needed the equine therapy. Maybe they needed an all-male program or an all-female program or whatever, right?
You said something really key, Joe. You said bio, psycho, social, right? Yeah. Those components are really fundamental whenever we're, discharging a client from treatment, or I'm discharging a client from services. It's, do you have the biological support, the psychological support, and also the psychological support and social support. Excuse me. That's a really big piece of social support, right? We teach that, right?
And then let's get one more question from the chat before we wrap it up. This is a fun one. What are your thoughts on alternative treatments for depression for people with SUD, specifically ketamine therapy and microdosing psilocybin?
Microdosing. Phew. Well, didn't we say harm reduction? We said maintenance assisted treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, the research is coming in where people are getting better having an avenue. You said how many roads in? How many roads out?
At least 1,000.
1,000 roads in and 1,000 roads out.
Okay. Do we include that in the number?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Not for me personally, but if it's working for somebody and they are thriving with it, then Godspeed.
Yeah. I'll say, Bill Wilson, one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, went on a very famous bicycle ride through the rainforest in South America while tripping on LSD, because even back in the late 50s and early 60s, we were already looking into the use of psychedelics for the treatment of mental health issues. There's a ton of research on MDMA being used to treat PTSD. Ketamine specifically for treatment-resistant depression. That's one thing that I think people don't hear enough, is that ketamine is like the big guns, and you don't need the big guns until you've tried out the little stuff. Tried other interventions first. But ketamine is something that is really, it's really gaining a lot of traction. There's a lot of evidence there. Again, I have a friend who has been doing the ketamine infusions for a while, and when he doesn't get the infusion, it's bad. And he's not addiction; it's just depression. So I think we're all on board for this one. Thank you for the question, Colin. On that,
Colin Blake,
thank you, Colin. So wrapping up our show, this is a good topic, you guys. We've already blown past the hour. So Clifton, you've met your commitment. You can just cut out whenever you want. Don't. But
all right, see you later.
I do want to take a second to acknowledge our behind-the-scenes team, Gabby Delgado, who has been such a big driving force for keeping us organized and getting this show on the air, and making all these good things happen. Tomorrow is actually her last day with Recovery Unplugged. I don't know if we can get Gabby to come on camera real quick. Come on, Gabby. There she is. Y'all, this is Gabby. She keeps us in line. She is a phenomenal human being and has been given a super cool opportunity to grow professionally and financially and in her life. And we wish her nothing but the best. Gabby, do you want to say anything? You don't have to.
No, thank you.
So thank you, Gabby. We're gonna miss you, but I know, we'll see you again because you're in the same room as Jason. She's right there. She's just, if Jason just panned a little bit to the right, we'd be okay. Anyway, so thank you guys, everybody who showed up today in the chatter. I loved all the interaction. If you heard something good here tonight that helped you, or maybe gave you an inspiration to help someone that you love, or maybe helped you understand a little bit more about someone that you love and what they're dealing with, please, help us get the word out there, like it and share it. It feels so lame to say that, but like, share, and follow, please. The video of this will live forever on YouTube, and we're still working on getting it in podcast form to be able to have it on all those other platforms. But we really, I think you guys in the chatter would agree that we're doing important work here, and we want to get it out to as many people as possible. So we would really, really appreciate that. And thank you for all your interaction. Jason, thank you as always for your presence and your counterpoint and ideas and thoughts. I love it. And Clifton, as our guest, you get the last word. If you want to y'all, Clifton is a wonderful private practice therapist in South Florida. He is available for private practice counseling and all kinds of other stuff. He has a great website. It's fehrassociates.com, FEHR associates.com. But Clifton, the final word is yours. Take us out, bud.
Yeah, I say thank you once again for allowing me to connect with you all again. This has just been a real treat for me. Definitely a high of my week. The hope is that not only did somebody take something from this that they can actually hold on to for themselves and possibly even share that with another person, that will just kind of keep that miracle happening as far as healing taking place. But also for all of us here on this show tonight, being able to make sure that you stay committed to just trying one more time, whether it's trying to have a conversation with your loved one or it's trying to actually get some help in some way, shape, form, or fashion. That we can all commit to that. I promise that things will change for us on a major level. So I'm wishing you all the best of luck in this journey, and please reach out.
Thank you, Cliff. That was very well said. Everybody else, thank you so much. We'll see you here same time next week with a different topic that I don't know what it is. Bye, y'all. Good night, everybody.